Everything is personal right here. Everything is personal right here.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another episode of Everything is Personal. Today we have a special guest. I'm so curious about this person's career trajectory, so many different things, but I want to welcome Eric. Is it Eric J. Baker or Eric Baker? Because there's another musician named Eric Baker, so I want to get it right.
Well, we're going to go with Eric Baker, but there's like 3 Eric Bakers in the music industry.
I know.
I'm going to call myself the middle one.
Eric Baker Sr.
Yeah, Eric Baker. Well,
when it comes to music,
Yeah, like I'm Eric Baker, middle child in the music business, because there's a guy who started StubHub's name is Eric Baker.
Yeah, I know. I read. I was like, oh, that's pretty interesting. I'm like, how are you involved with StubHub? I'm like, oh, it's a different Eric Baker.
Yeah. And then there's a guy that's really involved in like heavy metal.
Yeah, I think there's a country guy too that I read.
Oh,
so maybe there's another.
Well, he's like the up and coming Eric Baker then. Cousin.
So I mean, your career stems like over 30 years and so many different things in music, and I'm so curious. But how would you define? Are you like right now? Are you a music manager? How do you define your role currently in music?
So, I would say, I am a music manager for sure. I am a boutique concert promoter, which I've been for last 17 years. And everybody at Primary Wave is an A&R person.
Gotcha.
So, and an acquisitions person. So, if we get to the question of what's a day like, that can more define it. But yeah, we're all in the acquisition business. But day to day, I'm a manager, and I love what I do.
So let's rewind all the way back. And I know, like, when I was growing up, I wanted to be in music, but I'm not a musician. So I tried, I dabble in different instruments. That's not my forte. I'm not like Slash who picked up the guitar and like, oh, fuck, man, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. I'm going to play 8 hours a day. It wasn't like that. I was just, but I would listen to music all day, all night. And I'm like, maybe I want to go to music. My parents talked me out of it. They made me go to physical therapy school. So it was just, when you were growing up, and we'll get into all that, did you want to be in music? Was that like a goal?
The only thing I ever wanted to do. Okay. I was in bands. I was the worst, for sure. Like, I played in bands with like some really fine musicians. I practiced. I took lessons. I was definitely into it, but I knew that's not what I was going to be for a career. But I was inspired to be in the music business. It's the only thing I've ever wanted to be in. It's the only thing I've ever really done with my life.
Yeah. But so did you know, like, you said, all right, I'm not going to be in bands, but did you know, like, I'll give you an example. So I started listening to hip hop way back when it first started. I'm like, wait, Def Jam Records, Rick Rubin. I'm like, what the hell does he do? He doesn't play an instrument. He doesn't really run the board here and there, but he's a producer, but he just gives opinions. Like, I like this, maybe add a little bit of this. I'm like, I can do that. I have a good ear for music kind of thing. So but I didn't know what to go for. Like, there was no college course of, hey, this is be like Rick Rubin kind of thing. So was there anything that you said, all right, I'm going to be in music, but this is sort of the path that I'm choosing?
No, because my first job, I actually swept floors in a studio. I knew I didn't want to do that. But I like being around the studio. It wasn't my thing, though. I don't have that ear. Like, you might, those people who are in studios, and I don't care if you're the biggest producer, engineer in the world or the smallest, they have an ear that I just don't have. And they're all talented. I then worked for a concert promoter, and I thought that was going to be my path. I thought concert promotion was the coolest thing in the world. I was 100% bought in. And when I was in college, and by the way, this stems back to being 14 years old.
Yeah.
Okay. This wasn't like I had a revelation when I was 25. this stems back to it. I knew, like, after seeing AC/DC at Madison Square Garden, I was going to be in the music business. I was either going to be on the road, not knowing what I was going to do, but I was going to be one of those guys on the road, working on a tour, or I wanted to work for the people who put on shows, something to that extent. And then I started interning at a record label in a division called radio promotion, which are the people that got music on the radio. It's most famous for now for being the payola days of the music business. And I knew that's kind of what I wanted to do, because you were the artist liaison as well as like a very high profile job with a lot of pressure, which I kind of need that fight. And so I didn't start out in that, but that's what I ultimately did for a long time, and had great mentors and leaders that taught me how to do it. And a lot of different styles of doing it, but it was very lucky. And so I did that. But I knew from, like, it's just like, it gets you, like picking up a guitar. Me seeing people running around the garden working on an AC/DC show is the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's very similar, except that you listen to your instinct, and I did not. So, where did you grow up?
What did I play? Oh,
Where
sorry,
did
you
you
were.
grow up?
Where did I grow up? Oh, sorry, you're fuzzy for a sec. You were good, but now the audio is a little fuzzy, and I don't know if it's me or you. Sorry. I grew up in a town called Livingston, New Jersey, which is a suburb of Manhattan. It's like 20 miles southeast of Manhattan, southwest of Manhattan. Sorry, southeast would be the ocean, southwest of Manhattan, and it was a great place to grow up.
Were your parents together? Do you have siblings?
Yeah, my parents were together for part of the time. Got divorced. My dad moved into Manhattan. My mom stayed in Livingston, who's still there. I have one older brother, not into music at all. He was a car guy. I was a sports and music freak. I was definitely a product of growing up like in the 70s and 80s in terms of music. We had a next door neighbor, just like kind of like paint the picture. Think of like somewhat dazed and confused. But think of us as like kind of hanging on my deck, where there was a garage at the next door neighbors, and they were all playing Dylan and Neil Young and the Grateful Dead and stuff like that, and smoking pot. And we were sitting there watching, and they would throw roaches out, and we would run down and get them, my best friends and I, because there was our older brothers, and get up and pretend that we were high when we weren't, and just fell in love with the art of all of that at a very young age.
So what were your parents supportive of your trajectory into music? Like your goal was to do music. Were they, yeah, okay, but what is it?
I hate to say it sounds like a fairy tale with my parents, because trust me, growing up with my parents was not a fairy tale at all. I am so fortunate to have the parents that I have, even though their marriage wasn't great and suffer from stuff like that because of it. But they were so supportive. My grandfather, my mom's side, was somewhat of a famous doctor. I was the last hope to be a doctor because I'm the youngest on that side. I was reading New England Journal of Medicine at a very young age because my dad published it. So he's like, oh my God, this kid's going to have the keys to the kingdom. He's going to be a doctor. I love it. And then I was like, when I said I was going to be in music, and I made that decision at the age of 14, everybody was supportive. When I moved back to Manhattan to be in the music, my dad came to shows every Tuesday night that we had and showcases. My mom showed up at festivals that I produced, and so did my dad. Even after they got divorced, they showed up with like their significant others. And yeah, I mean, I'm very fortunate to say the least, to say that I had supportive parents.
Yeah, you're mentioning radio for a little bit, and you mentioned payola days. Radio was a very powerful medium back in the day. Like you had, once you're on the radio and you're getting your records out on the radio, people pick it up and you make money that way. So I worked at Tower Records, and I was music buyer, and then people will come in and from the labels, and they would be like, hey, you want to go see so-and-so, Pink Floyd, whatever, I have tickets. all you have to do is, buy a couple box sets of CDs or whatever it is for the store kind of thing. So it's sort of the new payola, I guess, kind of thing. But was that sort of part of the industry that you were in back then? And what is that new part of the industry now? Because radio doesn't have the same kind of power anymore.
It's a great question. One, let me go back to say I was a part of that sales team back then, that would offer tickets, and I was part of marketing and in sales. When I got into radio, the payola days were somewhat over. Maybe it went on at a higher level than I was as I was coming up, but by the time I got to a level where there would have been payola, it was gone. Way too regulated. But where do I see it now? I mean, it's playlisting, right? Like, listen, this is a relationship business. It always has been. There are very few programmers, there are very few radio promotion people left. The ones that are running the companies when we were all coming up are presidents, vice presidents, senior VPs. Very few of them are regional radio people anymore. There's not many radio people anymore because it's so corporate. It's always going to be, you got to pay the toll. I mean, I don't know if it is anymore because I'm far removed from it. Yeah. But it was then, you have to pay the toll. There was consultants, there were independent contractors, there was everything. I mean, but it's like, listen, you want to go to Manhattan, you go through the Lincoln Tunnel. I mean, it's just what it is.
I find it fascinating.
You have to pay the toll to get into the city.
Yeah, I find it fascinating that, like, we moved into like the Sirius XM days, and then we have streaming, and Spotify and all that. There used to be, all right, so there's a DJ, there's somebody that gets your music heard. Then, your program director who's going to program, the station, what they're going to play or give you some direction. But now it's like, you don't need any of that stuff. It's all driven by AI and things that you like, or is it not there yet?
It's not there yet. I mean, Spotify has playlist directors and format directors. Sirius does as well. More so with Spotify, obviously, there's algorithms to get you your daily playlists, et cetera, et cetera. And that like feeds, what you're looking at every day. But listen, you want to be on New Music Friday if you have a new record coming out. That's not happening automatically. It's not easy. If you're a rock record, there's really good rock playlists, and you got to work that system in order to get it. It doesn't happen automatically. R&B, country, whatever you're getting at. Right. Same with, just to give an example, as you know, I work in the legacy world, and that's a lot of research. I mean, everything, by the way, is research driven. When you're talking legacy. You have the 70s on 7, 80s on 8, 90s on 9, all of that on Sirius. That's all research driven, but you have to be in their ears to let them know what's going on as well, because there's anniversaries that are coming up and you want to do special events with them. And the more that happens, the better chance you have of more plays, which in the end puts more money in the artist's pocket, but it also helps drive merch, touring, et cetera, because it keeps it top of mind for the consumer. So, that interpersonal relationships are uber important still.
So how does that actually work? Like, so you're doing like as a manager for personally, what your band's, what like milestones are coming up. Then you have to communicate with the people in Spotify and in the streaming services and Sirius XM and sort of create a story. Is it more like story building kind of thing?
Yeah. I mean, everything is a story, right? We're in a creative business, so everything is always going to be a story, but it's got to be truthful. I mean, you can't. I don't think with my business, it's not a hype machine. I'm not trying to break a new artist. I can only give facts, right? So, like, as you know, I manage Jefferson Starship, and we're having a 50th anniversary this year. There's not a lot of bands that have that are still touring at the level that we tour, as well as we do it. All right. And when I say we, it's not me and the band, it's them. And it's a testament to the way the level that they keep themselves at. And so that's a real story. I can't make that up because anybody could go out, see them and be like, guys full of crap. Right. So you have to be truthful with people. And that will drive the ecosystem. The second that you are not truthful about it, it spreads. And so you have to have this integrity when you're talking to people. And they'll either want to get involved or not.
So I have a visual in my head, and
Yeah.
my visual is like this. You ever see the movie Get Him to the Greek, where
I saw it a long time ago, but I couldn't tell you lines.
So there's a scene where Jonah Hill is talking to P. Diddy, and they're pitching ideas. He's the label head, and he's like, well, we're coming up to the I don't remember if it's 20th anniversary, but Al the Snow, who's Russell Brand, and we should do a concert. We should put it out on a double CD set and a vinyl and a special edition and all this stuff. Like, he just built this whole thing for an idea that something is coming up that could be hot, that happened 20 years ago, and now you have this whole movie from that. Is it something similar to that, where you kind of create that whole scenario? Yeah.
It is, but where I work, I have extremely smart people. I would say people that are way smarter than I am in a lot of different areas. So we have a playlisting person that is our, like, Spotify, Apple Music, Pandora, etc. Whether I have relations at those or not, we have a point person there, and so we work collaboratively to that. Same with, we have a digital team, and so. But it's funny that you say that, because I'm looking for a deal for a soundtrack with one of my artists, with Mike Bivens from Belle Biv DeVoe and New Edition, and we're speaking to a label head who blew us away, because he had this great idea of taking the doc that Mike did and bundling it as a Blu-ray with the CD. I mean, with the physical.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Mike and I were just like, a Blu-ray? Let's go.
It's
like,
cool, right?
like, let's go. Like, I love you. Like, you're great. And because that's what he does all day. And there's very smart people in this business. And they know what they're doing. And you just have to be wrapped around the right people. And by the way, we've all been, like, ask any artist, you've been at a label that's done crap for you, and they hate the label. And you've then been with people that have done great things for you as well. And so, yeah, that's your Al the Snow movement of, like, all these things, and we got to bundle this, we got to do that. That was kind of the label head telling us how we have to do and why we have to do it. And it's very refreshing to have that and not have to do the pitch.
So let me see if I can rewind a little bit, and you tell me if I'm off. You worked at A&M Records, which is right.
I did.
So were you in the A&R department?
No, I was in radio promotion.
Okay, radio promotions. So you were you there doing, like, Seattle
I
days?
was.
Yeah. So tell me about that, because it wasn't Soundgarden on that label, and there's a few there's a few big bands. You were around the scene. Sheryl Crow. You were around the scene, though. You were in Seattle during that time, right?
I was. It was after Kurt died.
Okay.
And there's still a lot of trauma around that, just to let you know. I got there in 94, and Soundgarden was obviously huge. Pearl Jam was obviously is big. There was a lot of great musicians that have already passed away, though. So it was a moment of remembrance, as well as looking towards the current music and looking to the future. And so it was still a really exciting time to be there. And I was young, and I was around, like, all these great musicians that are saying this is the future classic rock already. And I'm, like, thinking back when, being on the deck, and Neil Young's been around for 10 years, and he's classic rock already, right? And because it's 78, 76, and they've only been around for a few years. They're already like Skinner's classic rock. They've been around since 72, or whatever. And it's like, that's what this is. And you just know that you're surrounded by these great people.
By the way, Guns N' Roses is classic rock now. That makes you feel really old.
By the way, Guns N' Roses has been classic rock for like 10 years already, right? Right. I mean, but you think about, like, some of the things, like, these are Hall of Fame artists already. And time flies. But you knew, I mean, I remember being I get a call from an artist, from one of the guys at Soundgarden, and we met him out, and it was Soundgarden, some of the guys from Pearl Jam, and some of the guys from REM. remember, there is not social media. There's no such thing as a smartphone. You have the Motorola StarTech flip phone, and you're like, toggling between the small battery and the big battery,
Yeah.
and I'm sitting at a place with them called the Crocodile Cafe, and you're just like going like, what can you add with my 3 years of experience? I have nothing, and you just sit there and you're just that this is greatness, and you soak it up and just appreciate the place that you're in right there. But I've already had my time at MCA at that point,
Yeah.
and went to A&M in New York, and I had a very fortunate to have really good mentors at A&M, and my boss Rick Stone, who I worked for in New York, promoted me and moved me out to Seattle.
Got it. So, we had this. I'm going to ask the sort of day in the life kind of question that you brought up, but
Mhm.
I'm going to preface it this way because maybe this is me, but also people that I've talked to growing up. Like a music manager, I always thought because I was obsessed with The Song Remains the Same, Led Zeppelin. I
Mhm.
was obsessed with Peter Grant. Like he's going to come in as a big guy. He's going to make sure they get paid. There's no, somebody's selling merch.
Don't I look like him? Like I'm I'm right there.
Exactly.
I'm the Peter Grant of the Pacific Palisades. Let's go.
He's gonna throw his weight around. He's gonna, call people out, like all that stuff. So that's not really what a music manager does. So what would be, and I know you're more than that, and you do a lot of different things, but maybe you can talk about like sort of a day or a week in life, all the different things that you have to do.
Can I digress though for a second?
Yeah.
So when I lived in Boston, I went to school in Boston, and then I was lucky enough that I interned for MCA, and then they hired me. And I remember that my bosses would say, the manager's going to be at the show. We got to make sure everything's for them. And I'm like, oh my God, the manager, like holy shit, the manager's going to like, it was always this like, it didn't matter that the executive from the label was going to be there, right? Who are the guys who paid me, but the manager was going to be there. So like had to be uber, like, so I always had like this image of a manager, like larger than life character.
Right.
So when the first band that I ever managed, they asked me to do it, which were guys that I knew from way back when, which was with a band called Warren, from Cherry Pie fame, was the first band like of notoriety that I managed. I managed like small no-name bands, but I looked at it like, what an honor to be like that guy now, right? But the business changed. Like there is no flexing anymore, right? Like, like listen, there are those types of people that still do that. So a day in a life.
Well,
Wow.
before you get into that, I'm going to interrupt you for 1 second because you brought up something. So I had Schoolie D on my show, who Philly guy, Ice-T said he's the originator of gangster rap, but he used to tell me a story like he would go into a place and he get paid up front. He would not play anywhere until he gets paid cash up front because he used to walk around and and I think Chris Schwartz, who used to run Rough House Records, told me the same thing because he managed him as well for a while. That he would get in and he goes, sometimes he wouldn't play and I have to go in and get money. And there was a couple times where he would play like a song and say, I gotta go to the bathroom, and like escape out the window to run and we get paid. So when Chris gets stuck with that, so these images they had between all these things, it's just a funny thing. But when you said manager, that's where people perceive the manager having that power.
Yeah, I mean, in the end, I guess they kind of do, because if you tell an artist this seems shady, like we're not going on until we're paid up front, because I mean, there are situations where you don't feel that they're going to pay you. And I've been in those situations with artists, and we haven't gone on until we've gotten paid, and sometimes they've scrapped it together. And if that happens, well, as long as we're paid. But listen, everybody deserves to get paid that does a job. Okay. And an artist isn't going to go on, whether it's me or gangster rap or classic rock or whoever. You do the job, you get paid for it. So that happens, but you also should have a good agency that's protecting you. right? So there are promoters like, listen, you're going and doing a Live Nation venue. You're not getting paid. You don't have to worry. They're good for it, right?
Yeah.
AG, you know,
Yeah.
BPC, like there are great promoters out there. You're not going to worry about it. You're doing an indie promoter. We ask for a 50% deposit. And if they don't have it, we don't do that. We won't even let them announce a show until we get, 50% deposit. And that, and that's very common in the industry. And a good agent helps protect so we don't have to do those jobs anymore. But when I managed Toots and the Maytals, Toots, has PTSD from getting ripped off all those years and always thought somebody was ripping him off. So when I was on the road with him, he's like, listen, I'm shorted. He thought he was shorted $25, $50. On the big money dates, he's getting paid like no one should. A, there's no cash exchanging hands. It's checks or wires.
Yeah.
So how is anybody shorting him? But B, just because he thought it, if you offered to pay him back, he felt better. He just wanted to know somebody would be on his side. And that's a lot of it. And being in the psychology of an artist is the most important thing in understanding their needs. Yeah. And that's why a lot of times you have to say, you're not going on until we get paid, just because they want to know you're on their side.
Well, it's that whole trust, and we'll go back to the day, but you brought up something interesting because I was going to ask you about Tits and Maytals, because when an artist passes away and you build that relationship, like I know managers because my daughter's she's an actress, so I know what managers do in that. But they develop this relationship, like this is your person, they look out for you, kind of thing. Make sure. So when a person passes away, do you work with their estate? Do you continue that relationship, or what happens?
You hope to.
Mhm.
With Toots, it's a different story because we co-publish his estate anyway. But it was especially hard for me because I used to sneak in. He was in the city going up to go see him. I mean, he was, one of those really special humans. The fact that I got to spend the time that I got to spend with him on a personal level. I mean, I could tell it could be a whole nother podcast on Time with Toots. It's and I know we spoke briefly about it before, but it's like the such a special man, and passed that this is a guy that would give his lunch money away because he knew he can have food at home, even though he didn't have shoes growing up, but he knew he had food. So that's the kind of human you're dealing with when you're dealing with Toots. Like there's story after story after story like this with a guy like that. So when it happened, it was especially hard, but also you couldn't get down to see the family because it was during COVID. And he passed away on 9/11/2020. And it was especially hard. And it's one of those things where you're like, you'll know where you were. You'll remember where you were when that happened. I'll always remember where I was and when I got that call.
Yeah, it's definitely, I can sense the special relationship. And like one of the reasons why I also brought this up, because I went to the Whalers not too long ago. And I'm like, they get to use the name the Whalers, but it's like, it's, if I remember correctly, it's sort of the drummer's grandson, or I don't remember what the connection is, but it's somebody who's not really part of the Whalers, but they get to use the Whalers and still play. And it's wonderful. It's a wonderful experience, wonderful band, amazing songs. But I was just wondering, because, once people pass away, are you connecting with the estate, and how do all those kind of deals work out that you can use the name and continue playing the songs?
Well, so there's a couple of different ways. For the most part, and this is a blanket statement, okay, almost anybody could play anything live. Okay, you and I could go do a duo and play almost anything live, unless somebody pulls those licenses, which just happened with a certain band, not that I represent. The Guess Who did that. So there was another version going out and playing it and claiming things, and so the rights owner pulled the licenses so it couldn't be played live. But as a whole, most of those are blanket licenses that are out there. So, but the name is a whole nother thing. So there's a couple ways that happens. One is there's just people in the band that were always in the band. Okay. You know, and then so they get to hold on to the name. Two is the estate, whoever runs the estate, whether it be a publishing or rights company, whether it be the family, whether it be a trust, whoever says, you could just go and use it. Or three, they pay royalty to the estate for using the name.
Got it.
And that's probably the most common way.
Mhm.
Because there's some association to it.
Yeah.
It's not like anybody's just going to take it. Like no one's just taking, the name of the Who 45 years later and just being like, oh yeah, I'm just gonna,
Yeah, I'll just go by the Who. Yeah, because
Yeah.
I had this conversation with somebody who's close to Fishbone, and they announced they're breaking up, and then Angela's Fishbone, and they were all fight. You can't be Fishbone, but I'm not Fishbone. I'm Angela's Fishbone. So yeah, it's a whole interesting dynamic.
Listen, I went through that with Great White, and then Jack Russell, and then Jack's Great White. Like I started managing Jack at the end of the breakup. And he had to be called Jack Russell's Great White. Fonts had to be a certain size. I mean, listen, it's just freaking music. Let's call it what it is.
Yeah. Well,
can't we all just get along?
I guess
And by the way, I did it with with LA Guns and Steve Riley. I mean, Steve Riley who recently passed.
Yeah.
And I will always take care of Steve's name and likeness and any publishing he has for his wife and for his son, because Steve was a good friend for many, many years, and I love the guy. And it's not about money or anything like that. It's just about he was kind of getting bullied by the other guys, and I didn't like it because I just don't like a bully. And I love that, and I loved Steve.
Yeah.
And so that's why, But once again, they went through the same thing,
How'd you connect with Belle Biv DeVoe?
That was through the agent, but I did work Poison way back when. And I think I told you the story. They made me wait like 2.5 hours for an in-store to happen. And I don't know if they did. I don't even think they were aware, because when I told them the story, they're like, I don't remember being late. I do. They don't,
Of course.
which because they probably weren't aware. And the ironic thing is they're like the most punctual band in the world. No one's late to anything at all. So that's the funny part of it. And so, their agent connected me with them, and we had a meeting, and it was kind of like the vibes just happened immediately. And I can't say enough great things about all of them. I mean, Ronnie, Rick, and Mike they're all great in their own way, and they all have their own agenda separately. And I'm not talking like that. I just say like Ronnie has a couple businesses outside of Belle Biv DeVoe, so when they're not on the road, Ronnie's taking care of that. Rick is really into like self-help and wellness and stuff like that. So, and his wife Amy and friends and family and singing, like his identity is Belle Biv DeVoe New Edition. Yeah. And Mike is a total entrepreneur. I mean, I learn from him daily, and I speak to Mike, 3 or 4 times a day. But the second they get together, whether it's on a phone, and they speak every day, these guys. And by the way, it's 34 years. I've never seen them argue, not once. And these guys speak every day. When we go to a show, we show up 30 minutes before the show. There's no alcohol in the room. There's very minimal food in the room. They show up, they do their business. It's literally, New Edition's a different thing because it's so much more demanding. And there's more guys and there's bigger things they have to do more, but they're so professional in the way they do it, and they do their warm-ups and they crush it. And by the way, and then they're out. There's no hanging around. There's no waiting around. Like, we'll hang at the hotel kind of thing.
It's interesting because I was going to ask you, I was listening to Ann Wilson from Heart. She was talking about, now they're in their 70s and they're touring, but there's still bands. And I think she said like Def Leppard. And by the way, if anybody's listening from Def Leppard, I'm wrong. just call me out, but I remember her mentioning Def Leppard. That there's bands that still party on the road, even though like as they used to party back in the day. You work with a lot of those '80s bands like Skid Row, and we just mentioned LA Guns. Is there still that whole party scene? Or
Well,
now these guys are older, like bring our grandkids
well,
up on stage.
well, Skid Row doesn't really party. Like they'll have some beers and stuff like that, but there's not partying. I mean, they're married with kids. I mean, Jefferson Starship will hang. I
Yeah.
mean, we're on the road with Marshall Tucker. Like, there's always a good hang after, but there's not partying. But and remember, David Freiberg's 85,
So I'm saying.
and he's killing it out there. I mean, but they hang. I mean, they love what they do, and they cherish their moments. I don't think I can represent a band that parties. And by the way, I don't think Def Leppard parties like that. We represent them in publishing,
Yeah.
and nobody talks about it like they party like that. But just she might be right. I might be wrong. But I haven't seen it any show, and I'm going to the Fenway show, so I might be able to come back and tell you something different.
Right.
But I don't know if I can represent a band that parties like that, only due to the fact that it's annoying.
Yeah.
Do you want to be around a bunch of drunks and like people just going nuts and trying to like herd cats at the end of the night when all you want to do is go back to your hotel or go home? There's no I'm too old.
But yeah, I was going to ask you, you started it's the M3 rock festival, correct?
Mhm.
Like, so
Yeah.
you have a lot of these bands that are the '80s rock or heavy rock or hard rock or whatever you want to call it. '80s, pretty much they're '80s bands, correct? They're
Yeah.
on your
Arena rock or
arena,
hair metal.
yeah.
Yeah.
However, so yeah, so I was just wondering if you have all these bands that are playing and you already have to herd cats, especially if they're partying and contributing to that, it makes your job a lot harder, right?
But I don't manage any of them. I mean, Skids has played. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? When I managed Jack, he played. But for the most part, and I'm not the wrangler getting them on stage. First of all, Meriwether Post, if anybody's from Maryland or has gone to the festival, it's the greatest venue in the country. And IMP has the greatest staff that does everything there. And it's so efficient. So it really makes it easy to be partners with them on this. And so, but I will tell you this, they all feel self-important that day, especially the smaller ones. They drink way too much and it's annoying. And they invite 500 people that we don't want backstage. And it's just like, yeah, I mean, but you know what? Everybody has a day, and you want to something they have fun, and they get to feel good like it was back in the '80s for a day, and play on the big stage instead of playing, Jimmy's, Crab Shack and whereverville, right? And but I'm talking about the small
Yeah,
band,
yeah. No, I get it.
But you want to something, and they get treated the same way that everybody else does. They get a dressing room with a shower, their full rider gets taken care of, they get every single thing that everybody else gets, and that's what makes it so special.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you a couple questions about today's music industry because it
Mm-hmm.
changed so much. So, the way I see it is there's a lot of collaborations that are happening.
Mm-hmm.
It's so I'm trying to figure out how to make money in music. If I were in music, I'm not. But it's interesting to me because you have people like I don't know, like Travis Scott, right? So Travis
Yep.
Scott says, "All right, I have a label. It's Cactus Jack. So now I'm also not only selling merch, but I have my own clothing line. Then I'm going to collaborate with Nike. I'm going to create special shoes, and then we're going to create a sponsored tour and a CD. So is that how you make money in the industry? Do you have to collaborate and kind of get yourself out there like that?
Well, can we strip it down because Travis Scott is an anomaly, right? You have your people that are, whether it's the Olivia Rodrigos or Serena Carpenter's, Travis Scott's, like you have your biggest and the best. Like, listen, we live in a brand world now, right? So for artists that are big, I mean, the biggest and the best, it's a much different world than I would say, and that goes for country or hip hop or pop or rock, right? It's a much different for call it the mid levels that are playing smaller sheds and theaters, not arenas, right? Or packaged arena shows. It's a lot harder to get those kind of huge Nike looks, obviously, because you haven't created your own festival. You're not selling 20,000 tickets a night or 17,000. The eyeballs are different. Like the optics are just different. You look at your streaming numbers, you're not talking 200 million monthly listeners. You're talking 7 million monthly listeners, which is still a lot, right? When you think about it. So there's things that you do, right? You tour. Like touring is a great way to make money. And if you tour smart, there's a lot of money in it. Merchandise is a great way to make money, both touring and e-commerce. But you have to work at e-commerce. There's streaming. There is money in streaming. If you do it right, there's money in physical sales still. There's money in VIP experiences.
Okay.
If you have a good publishing company and don't try to own it all yourselves, and you have people work it for you, and the right people, whether it be Primary Wave or somebody else, there's a lot of good money in that also. And trust me, it's still hard to get a good sing, but there's still a lot of money because look how much content's out there now, right? So if you have somebody that's not just waiting for the phone to ring, that's going to pick up the phone and call, there is a shot that you could get something. Now, granted, it's not an easy shot, but that, there's still a chance. But I would say, right now, touring and merch are probably the best ways for an artist to make money.
Yeah, but it's interesting about sync that you brought up, like placement, because there's so much content that's coming out. And I think about AI. You can have AI create music, but it's different because I was listening to like Tarantino talk about the way he thinks about writing movies, and he thinks with music in mind. So you can't have AI write a song like he actually hears. You brought up the Who. He hears a Who song, like he hears that in the scene. So you can't make AI write that. You have to, use that song probably. And if you use any other song, like my girlfriend and I, we watched Reservoir Dogs the other night again. I was like, you can't Steelers Wheel. You can't. There's iconic scene. You can't replace that. It's so etched in your mind. That,
well, 100%. Like think about like in Days of Confused, like anything but Alice Cooper schools out, like when they're all running and getting chased, like come on, like Linkletter put so much money into that, and Cameron Crowe, when Judge Reinhold's taking her to get the abortion, and like somebody's baby is like the song, like they're like, come on, like it's so perfect the way these great directors think about it. So yeah, I mean, when it works, especially in that.
Wanted to ask you about music docs. And I know you and I talked about this, on a personal level, but I just recently saw the Nickelback documentary, and I just find it fascinating that a band like that sold, 50 million albums. I don't think anybody can do that anymore, especially a band like that. Do you think that this whole thing, it's kind of new now that all these music documentaries are coming out? Do you think that it's like that whole thing with purpose? We're going to put this documentary out. We're going to put this 25th anniversary album to support that. Is it all like strategic, or is it just like, these people are sort of, we want to tell a story and resurrect this band that may have been forgotten, even though they sold 50 million albums?
Well, Nickelback's an interesting story. So I haven't seen the doc, and I want to, so I'm going to actually watch it. But I was involved in that project from the beginning. And I saw it. Like I saw how big that was becoming so quickly. But you got to remember, they were kicking around for a long time before, like How You Remind Me hit, which catapulted them. But there has to be a purpose, right? So I would say in terms of Nickelback, there was a purpose. There's a tour, there's the doc, right? You should always have a strategy when you release anything, and you shouldn't just do it to do it. You're not making money on a doc, or very few do, right? The purpose, you can't go into a dock thinking you're going to get rich because it's not going to happen. If it does, you're very fortunate. But as a whole, you're not going to. So you go, why not use it as a marketing tool for something else?
Right. Yeah, it's probably exactly, what the plan is, because it made sense on packaging all this together. It definitely
Yeah,
made sense.
but also like look at Steve Van Zandt. Like he just came out with the doc, and I started to watch it. It's a 2.5 hour doc, but I think a lot of his doc is telling the story of his purpose. Like he's done well, but he has a purpose in life, and I think his doc is more about that.
It's different. I
Mhm.
watched some, but I'm not done with it yet. I kind of
Yeah,
paused. My ADD kicked in because it
yeah,
started getting boring. I just want to see more
yeah.
music. And I switched to Lilyhammer, which is the show that he was on. I was like, maybe I'll get a different perspective of little Steven.
Yeah.
But yeah, it totally makes sense. Maybe you're the right person to ask this question. There was so Jefferson Airplane and Jefferson
Mhm.
Starship.
Yep.
Was there a reason for the switch name? Was it like, because I remember George Clinton tells a story of like he had Funkadelic, and then they owned the name, so he created Parliament Funkadelic, and then he started
Yeah, yeah.
creating all these offshoots. Was it similar to that kind of
Well, Yarma and Jack left the band at that point.
right?
So they kind of wanted to recreate something, and they wanted to recreate it with, and Marty left and then came back, and they just Paul and Grace and David and they, and the rest of the crew. Just it was a different band. There were different players. So why call it Jefferson Airplane when there is only part of Jefferson Airplane? I mean, you gotta remember back in that time that Jefferson Airplane was so far ahead of their time. They were like the first ones to really create like the modern festival. They would bring flatbeds into Golden Gate Park and do shows to have a festival, but they weren't called festivals then. It was just like that's what they did, and so they just felt like we can't do what we did with them. We have to create something new.
So I interrupted myself and you
Yeah.
several times on this question
Mhm.
about a day in life, but maybe having sort of a painted picture, maybe it's a day, maybe it's sort of a week of all the different things, because you're also working with labels, you're working yourself, you have a media company,
Mhm.
there's all these different pieces that fit together to do something. So maybe you can kind of take me through that a little bit.
Yeah. So one of the things about working on the West Coast is, you know, especially in this industry, is people usually start late. I start extraordinarily early. I'm usually up by 5:30 in the morning. One, because I truly enjoy life. And two, I feel like I live near the beach. I should probably be down there, especially during the summer when it's light out. So I try to get some sort of exercise in the morning before work. Also, on days that I don't, it's my office is an hour away now. So you want to beat the traffic. So, excuse me, usually on the phone early in the morning with someone on the East Coast or over in Europe. And then by like 7:30 ish, I'm on the phone with an artist. Um, I try to do, if it's a Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday, there's either company or artist meetings that we have weekly. I always talk to my merch companies, talking to agents every day for each artist. I time block and I take out an hour where I put my phone down. I don't look at it. And I go through emails. I get my things to do list together. Then I usually will get back on with an artist because something pops up. There's budgeting, there is more artist calls. And then I try to find people that I haven't spoken to in a while, at least one a day to speak to. Because I think relationships are the most important thing that you could do. But I think really like a day in a life is, and also it's managing people within Primary Wave and then managing me as well, because there's always so much going on, whether it is asking advice on a sync that's coming in, whether it is talking about an initiative that we want to do with a brand, with our brand team, talking to our digital team, talking to our PR team. So you're working within. When it comes time for M3, I get more involved in either buying talent or imaging or social media. And so that takes up a lot of the time during that. And as it gets closer and closer, and that's usually about 9 months out from the festival. So we're getting into that time right now. As it gets closer to the festival, it gets more into the logistics and artist liaison, about 3-4 months out. And when we get to, we're also always talking to promoters and venues. I try to thank venues for shows that have happened with any artist. Just because, once again, we're their guest when we come in, even though they're paying us, we're always their guests. We want to make sure that, we get their take on how the show was and how the crew was, and we want to come back, and I don't think that people serve like the promoter reps and promoters like they used to. I mean, that is what made this industry great. And you look at some of the great managers, whether it be Irving Azoff or, guys like Charlie Brusco or, Tom Consolo, all these guys, like they were on the road. They were best friends with every promoter, regional promoters and so on. So I feel like, like my generation has to do that. I'm sure a lot of people do it. So I try to do that. And that's kind of what like brings you to the end. And then I catch up another hour of emails and then go home, and I try to clear out that inbox before the end of the night.
Yeah, I mean, everything you said is so exciting to me. Like, I wish I would have went to something. I wish didn't go to school. Maybe just like interned and swept floors and started that.
Well, I went to school though.
No, I know. I went,
but sleeping floors was great. Driving the van was great.
I went to physical therapy school, but I worked my way by working in Tower Records, and I'm like, I got paid $7 an hour, but it's still the greatest job I've ever had because I'm surrounded by music nonstop and all the time and all different genres. So it just definitely connects with me in that way.
But like something popped up today, like on my memories, and it was like, we were in, I want to say with Jefferson Starship, we were touring with Night Ranger and Bret Michaels last year. And it was at the Garden State Art Center, which is, you obviously know Garden State Art Center, but that was like my home shed growing up. And I'm like, man, like how freaking cool was that? Like you still get excited. It doesn't make a difference. Yeah. Like the sun's coming down, the artist is going on. It's still that romantic feeling of rock and roll, especially during the summer. And I think the day you lose that's the day you shouldn't be in the business. Yeah. The day you don't want to take an artist call is the day you shouldn't work with an artist, right? Like you should never dread what you do. And I'm fortunate enough to work for, like, today was a day where I had 2 pitches for publishing. So, and you get so amped up on like the greatness of the company that I work for, because I feel like I didn't even want to come here 9 years ago. And Larry Mistella, the founder, was like, just do it and we'll figure out your deal later. And like, I've never looked back, and I always say it was the best professional decision I've ever made. But I'm surrounded by like great people, like all the time. You get like amped up talking about it. But like when a band's about to go on stage and they ask you to come pray with them for the first time when they're going on stage, and you're like, I'm really doing this? Like, no fucking way, Like it doesn't get better than that.
So was the very first concert that you attended, was that AC/DC?
It was the very first concert I attended without my parents.
Yeah.
Nope, that's a lie. I apologize. Jackson Browne was the very first concert I attended without my parents at camp. My very first concert at home, I went with my guitar teacher, Herb Barron. And he and I just missed each other at Dead & Co. at the Sphere, so I'm bummed. And my friend Andrew Dreskin, who he and I like were best friends, grew up playing in bands together. And he actually started a company called Ticket Web and then Ticket Fly, which I'm sure everybody here bought tickets from. Yeah. So sure. One of the smartest people you'll ever meet. Like he's one of those guys that like, oh yeah, I think I'm gonna pick up a guitar. He's like, oh yeah, this is how you play Hell's Bells. I'm like, I don't even like you anymore, dude. Like, you know, it's like I'm just barely learning how to play. I had to switch to bass,
Yeah,
so
that makes it easier.
which I loved.
Uh, so since you're in the music industry, do you actually go to concerts also? Do you still enjoy going to shows? Or is
Yeah.
this like
Oh yeah.
so
Yeah.
what
Like,
was the last concert you attended?
well, well, that's a weird question because I just went to go see New Edition in the residency.
All right.
Um, okay, but the one well, I took
Where
my
it's not
son.
work related, maybe.
That wasn't work related. I
Oh,
actually
you
wanted
just
to see the
wanted
show.
to see it.
Yeah, but I mean, it's half work related because I wanted to see my guys in the show. But
Right.
I mean, I was up the whole time like dancing. I mean, it brought me back to every Sweet 16 that I was ever at. With Mr. Telephone Man,
Oh,
Cool
yeah.
It Now, like come on. And then I went to Dead and Co at the Sphere
Okay.
with Jen and Levi, and that was unbelievable. I mean, I've been to over 150 Dead or Dead and Co shows, and
Right.
by far the experience at the Sphere, and we went to U2 as well. Um, the Dead and Co thing there was unbelievable. Levi took me to Empire of the Sun last year. I don't know if you're a fan of theirs,
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
but like if you've never seen them, that's like a life changing experience for like someone that's like into the legacy rock world, you know. In 2 weeks, Levi and I'm trying to get Jen to go to Fenway to come see. We're going to actually see Def Leppard, Journey, and now it is Steve Miller
Yeah.
instead of Hart.
Yeah. Going that shit.
So yeah, I'm going to see music.
Cool.
Yeah,
Cool.
what about you? What was your last show?
My last show was I just saw Slash and the Blues Slash's Blues Fest at the Greek. So it's
Oh, nice.
like Eric Gales, uh Samantha Fish, Warren Haynes, like Government Mule
Oh,
guys,
yeah.
and Slash. It's all blues, and then Chris Robinson from Black Crows came.
Oh,
That
that's
was
it.
this weekend. It was just fantastic.
Nice. So, you know, I saw the Crows. I saw Dirty Honey.
Yeah.
Dirty
Oh
Honey's a
yeah. I
great band.
love Dirty Honey.
Yeah, yeah. But you know, it's funny though because like you ask about like a week, it's like I've been traveling.
Yeah.
Like, so it's like I keep missing all these shows and then they're gone. I mean, I'm gonna go see Foreigner for sure.
Mhm.
I always want to see Offspring every time they play.
Yeah.
You know, it's like there's bands that you want to see. It's just like when are you around?
Well, I mean, so I see shows at least once a week, probably multiple times a week. So something from like a small venue. I'm going to see a singer named Lady Bird. She,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah.
at jazz, just amazing, amazing, like great voice and energy and all that stuff. To a big arena band. So it's there's always like changes in between. Like I'm going to see like Black Crows and Aerosmith, but then I see like these little bands or
Yeah.
jazz or something like that at Venice West. Like I'm going
Yep.
to see Polyrhythmics. So I don't know if you know who they are, but
I heard Venice West is good.
great spot,
Yeah.
great spot to see a show.
Do you remember Hurricane?
Oh yeah, for sure.
They're supposedly playing the Whiskey. Like I'm gonna go that.
There you go. That kind of
Like
stuff.
yeah. Like I'll go see stuff if I'm here. I'm just
Yeah.
not here. That's
No,
the
I hear
problem.
you. Yeah. Well, you see shows when you're traveling too, but if you're working, then it's hard to get away. All right, so I get a
Yeah, and
music
you know the
question.
other
Yeah.
thing is though, it's like I
Mhm.
play lacrosse, I coach
Yeah.
lacrosse,
Yeah.
and my kid and my wife. It's like you don't have time
Yeah.
to get out.
True. No, you're right. All right, so for the next year, you have to listen to 5 albums, since only 5. And by the way, you don't have to remember the name of the album. It could be like, whatever, a Who album or something like that. What will be those 5 albums? Not, I'm prefacing this because people have done this to me, and I'm like, could change tomorrow. So it's just a moment in time.
So I am the worst person with album names and
Mhm.
song titles. So
Great.
can I give you artists?
Yeah, for sure.
The Grateful Dead, for
Mhm.
sure. It would be Queen, the Isley Brothers. I know you're shocked about that one.
No, I freaking love
No,
that.
because I used to manage them. That's
Oh
why.
yeah.
Oh, I thought I told you that. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
you're right.
Used to is the main word there. But I love the Isley Brothers. That's three.
Well, they were better when you
Um,
used to manage
I mean, Ron and Ernie are good at any point, and
them.
their music is just so freaking timeless. Um, uh, who else would I do? I'd probably do Fleetwood Mac. Um, and you know, I'm gonna go with NWA. Yeah, I mean, that really just kind of gives me everything all in one.
Yeah, you pretty much
But
get
like,
that.
I can't believe I don't have the Stones in there. Like, there's so many other things like I can't believe. But if I had to just take those artists with me and go away, I could be good for a long time.
I did just see the Stones, so I saw back-to-back nights. So the Stones were the night before I went to see Slash. And
Nice. I wanted to go, but we went to Vegas.
I mean, I gotta say that, I saw them last time a couple years ago, and I went because I'm like, this is probably gonna be it.
Yeah,
It's 80 and how long? They're back and
yeah.
great again. I just don't. I can't believe what they're able to accomplish in their 80s, and Mick Jagger is just like
It's.
he's the
I'm
greatest.
so bummed. Like I gave, Izzy, Jen's daughter.
Yeah.
I gave Izzy my Wednesday tickets because we were at a retreat, and then I'm like, oh wait, they're playing Saturday week, and I'm like, oh, I'm not here. You know. Let me ask you this, and I have a definitive answer on this one question. I can help because favorite song of all time.
In general or Stones?
No, just in general, just
Oh shit, favorite
like from
song of all
growing up.
time?
Yeah, it's tough, but I got one.
Uh, Favorite song of all time. That's really tough. It varies, it changes. So it used to be Dark Side of the Moon. I used to play
Mm,
that, but then I was dating this girl in middle school, and we played Dream On like 1,000 times over and over.
yeah,
And then I played Stairway like so
yeah.
over and over and over. I don't know. So it
So
varies.
give me
What does?
Shelter for sure.
Oh,
Yeah,
amazing.
like yeah. I mean, there's. Wait, did you ever see? I know you did. Heart doing Stairway to Heaven.
Oh, it makes me cry every single time I see it.
That could be the best song ever. When they do, like
When they
also like
do
that.
it,
That's the best cover ever.
I must agree with you because every single time, and I've shown this to so many people, I'm like, you got to see
Yeah,
the video of this. It's the Kennedy Honors
yeah,
Awards for if anybody wants to go and Google or YouTube it. Uh, they cry. The guys from Zeppelin cry, and Jason Bonham plays with them, and the choir, and and it's just fantastic.
it, watching Page and Plant and John Paul Jones, like watching their reaction is besides the performance being so incredible, watching the reaction is what makes it so emotional, right?
You're right.
Like watching greatness, see greatness
Yeah.
is so great, you know?
And Anne talks about how nervous she was, and she didn't think that she was doing a good job, and she only like
Uh,
heard it afterwards. I'm like, she's so humbled. I don't know
yeah,
any of these people, so I could be completely wrong. I just know from
yeah,
hearing, it sounds to me because she's like also doesn't think she's got a great voice. I'm like, you got to be kidding me!
I know,
Like,
right?
listen to yourself.
I know. You're fucking Ann Wilson. Can you stop?
Exactly. Stop.
But you want to know,
Exactly.
that's what's kind of endearing about her, right?
For sure.
I feel like, you're Ann Wilson and you don't think you're good. You're pretty much a god.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a fine line between having confidence in knowing your instrument and having a little bit of humility rather than, flexing and making yourself trying to convince yourself you're better than you are because you're not, you stop being of the learning mindset and you
Yeah.
start thinking of yourself way better and you sort of pause in life. So I think there's that fine line of confidence and humility, and she definitely has it. So
Well, it's funny because like people like think of like Axel that just gets up there and does it. Like I'm sure you've read this also. He warms up and cools down for hours
yeah.
before the show. Like to think the fact that he after a show cools down for hours
Mhm.
with his voice. Like most people don't do that. I mean, his thing is real, right?
Yeah, it's
Maybe AC. I think I got to add ACDC to that also that list. I'm gonna
oh
have to kick some. I'm gonna have to kick someone out.
You want to modify the list? That was a moment in time. Like I said, you can keep doing it over and over. But yeah, so, yeah, Axel, you know, you gotta with him, it's interesting because if you see him on multiple nights, and I've done that before,
Yeah.
it's not the same. So he's
Yeah.
great, and then he's not, and then he's great again. So he's not always consistent. But you know,
It's hard to sing like that,
oh yeah, that
you know?
range too.
Yeah.
All right. So, final bonus question for you. Please describe what your room looked like growing up.
Oh, wow. Oh, shit. That's the best question I've ever been asked. Okay, so I had a twin bed. Man, my parents, like my kid doesn't have a twin bed. Go back to that then. I had a twin bed. I had white Formica furniture. That was like the length. So my bed was in one corner. The white Formica furniture was underneath the window part. That was the length. But I had to have wallpaper on the width wall behind like my bed, like that went over to where it was, to where like some of the furniture was. And the reason being is I used to draw my walls with crayon when I was a little kid, so like hard that paint wouldn't cover it. So my parents had a wallpaper that one wall. I, as you said, as a little kid,
Whichever
is
room
good.
whatever.
As I got older, I built speakers and electronics because the only way I could get out of that class to play lacrosse and get credit. So I built these huge, huge speakers. I'm talking like 4 feet tall, 2.5 feet wide. They killed it for the system that I had. Probably a little too much speaker for my room. But so that was on one side and that was on the other. My closet was a complete disaster. When my parents said clean your room, everything went into a closet, and if you open the door, it was like a cartoon character. It all fell on you type thing, which is the irony is because I'm such a neat freak.
Okay.
Now, I'm not worried about like specs of stuff, but I like everything kind of in its place. But yeah, that was kind of, I had a little Nerf hoop on a closet door. And at one point I brought home, you weren't ready for this, a Jewish family living in the Northeast. I went to the Livingston Mall to a shop called the Hong Kong shop, and I was a huge Leonard Skinner fan. I might have to take 2 people out and put Skinner in now. And then I was a huge Leonard Skinner fan, which I still am. And I brought home a rebel flag, a Confederate flag. And my mom goes, and I put it up over the windows, and my mom goes, "What are you doing?" I said, "It's Leonard Skinner." She goes, "Slavery, anti-Semitism." I said, "I am taking the flag down. Will you drive me to the mall to get a refund?"
I was not aware. Sorry.
Yeah, that I am just a kid.
No posters. No.
You know what's so funny? Oh, man, you're bringing up like some real PTSD shit in me right now. I didn't have a lot of posters in my room growing up, which is odd. I collected magazine covers, and magazine articles, which I had in bins. But I am a huge, huge, huge collector of poster art now and rock art. You see this right here?
Yeah, Everlong.
That's a song. That's the song Everlong. In the middle, it says Everlong, and it's the lyrics around it. And a friend made it for me. Those are all like dead posters back there from a show. And if you look at the other ones on the other side, this, by the way, it's my son's room that I'm in right now. And he has like, I gave him that. And then he has like my dead posters that he found. But a friend of mine, and I'm going to just mention his name because he deserves it. A great attorney named Chris Bush. He knew I was a huge fan and a collector, and this kid brought some of his own collection. He found a 1967 handbill from the Fillmore of Jefferson Airplane. And I had lunch with him 2 days ago, and he gave it to me as a present. Yeah, so yeah, I'm a huge collector now of like posters and art and stuff. I probably had like, Cheryl Teagues and Heather Thomas on my ceiling somewhere, but
I had Heather Thomas.
Christy Brinkley.
I had the Heather Thomas poster on the back of my door. I had Freddy Krueger on one side and Heather Thomas on the other side.
I definitely had Farrah Fawcett. Definitely on the door I had posters. Yeah, maybe I had posters. But I like girlfriends, and they probably got pissed.
Eric, where can people find out more? Where can they engage you, your company, or connect with you?
So, the company's Primary Wave. And you can look up just primarywave.com, and you go under teams, and there's bios, and you can find out more about me there. I think on Instagram, I'm Eric J. Baker. Probably the same thing on Facebook, but I have my company website is for where I did my festivals and stuff like that is New Breed MM, like New Breed, and then musicmanagement.com, or on LinkedIn, probably Eric J. Baker on that as well. And that's JAY, not J. Actually, I'm going to look right now because, it's funny that it's like you don't know phone numbers anymore.
Yeah, you got to look it up.
Right. The festival is the M3 Rock Festival.
Yep.
And yeah, my Instagram is Eric Jay Baker, ERICJY Baker. You can always DM me there.
Cool. Well, first of all, to listeners, I appreciate everybody hanging in. I hope you enjoyed this, and if you did and you hung in here, please leave a review. I prefer 5 stars, but if you leave less, then we can discuss the reasons why. Leave some comments, and if you want the book, Amazon, I think it's Amazon Prime Day still. Probably when this is out, it's not going to be, so it's not expensive anymore. Making cannabis personal, and so please get it there.
Can I just mention something about that?
Sure.
So
Yeah.
you and I did a session on that. I knew nothing about it. We had dinner. I'm going to give a little plug because it was a great interview that you did with my wife, Dr. Jennifer Berman, which I did learn a lot about women also, which I know that you guys, that was kind of your age. But so at dinner, you and I talked about this, and I really did learn a lot. And I'm not saying this because I'm sitting here. I did. So go out, buy the book. It's not expensive. And it will be the next Amazon Prime Day coming up when that happens. So
yeah, well,
it's worth it.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. And then this, in Dr. Jennifer Berman, I mean, yes, the podcast we had together, but what we created together, this menopause biotype test, I really it's really helping a lot of women, but it's not only helping women with their hormone health. Man, I've had a few of my friends call me up and are like, you saved my marriage. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, once the hormones got optimized correctly,
Yeah.
my wife is sleeping through the night, it's a different person I'm with. So I just really think it's really important to have that conversation with your significant other.
And it's true. And just the work that you're doing though with that, and with cannabis, and how you're understanding, the metrics and what your body type is and your functionality. And learned a lot about myself through our session. And obviously it's really important to know that. So thank you for that.
I appreciate it. Well, thank you for being on. Appreciate your time.
Yep. Yeah. Appreciate your time. Thank you.